Shalom Aleichem Rabbotai, Shabbat Tov. We are continuing Mishnah Yomi in the first parak of Maasrot at Mishnah Zayin. Recall that the last topic we talked about was when the finishing step of a food product was the Gemar Melocha. Because before that point, someone could have a casual snack, an achilat arai, from this produce without taking the tithes. But once it's reached that final completion point, one can no longer snack from it until he takes the tithes. So Mishnah 7, Hayayin, what about for wine? Misha Yakapeh, from when he skims it. So skims what? So he's skimming from the top of the lower gat, the lower basin. The way their wine press was set up, they would have the tub at the top where they would trample the grapes, and it would flow into a vat, and then from the upper vat down through some sort of pipe or waterfall kind of situation to the lower gat where it would ferment. So once you've skimmed off the residue, the grape peels or stems or seeds from the lower gat, then is considered finished, even though it's not yet fermented. And the Mishnah says, Afal pi sheyikpa, even though he's already skimmed from the lower vat, kolet menegat yona, he could still take out of the upper vat, a minitzinor, from the pipe area. V'shota, he could still drink that. It's not considered done until it's in the lower reservoir where it will sit and ferment. Hashemen, by oil, a similar situation. Mishyod leuka, once it goes into the receiving basin next to the press, it's considered done. Afal pi sheyarad, even though some oil has run into that basin, notel mina ekel, he can still take from the sack. They would put the olives into a sack and then press them, so you could eat olives out of the sack casually before tithing. Mibein hamemel, and from under the stones that they used to crush them. Mibein hapotzim, and from between the boards, either the boards they used to push down on the sack or the boards holding the framework of the press together. Now the Mishnah turns to an interesting halacha. If you put untithed produce onto something else or onto a heat source, does that make it finished, a finished product? So the Mishnah rules, you could put this oil, this untithed oil, onto a hot cracker. He took his crackers, his wafers out of the oven, they're hot, so you put a little oil in, it's very gishmak, that's fine to do without tithing, or la tamhui, on a food that's already on the serving platter. Aval lo yeten lekadera v'lalfas kashen rotchin, but you cannot put this untithed, unfinished, it's not even finished yet, unfinished oil into the kedera, the pot, the lalfas, also called the ilpas, the frying pan, kashen rotchin, when they are hot, when they're on the fire, what we call, you might be familiar from Hilchos Shabbos, a kli rishon, a utensil, a cooking implement on the fire is kli rishon. So if you're putting this unfinished oil there, it's becoming part of a cooked food, and now by definition, it's considered finished, and there's no more achilat arai. Any eating of a cooked, prepared food like this is achilat keva and must be tithed first. Rabbi Yehuda Omer is a qualification. The kolhu noten, you could put this unfinished oil into any kli. Now he's talking about a kli off the fire, not a kli on the fire, because that would definitely cook. Chutz midavar sheish bo chametz v'tzir, except for a kli off the fire. It used to be on the fire, still warm, has food in it, so could you put your oil in there? Not if it has chometz v'tzir, vinegar or brine, because those items accelerate the cooking process, so then its untithed oil will be part of a cooked dish and will need to be tithed. Mishnah Ches, ha'igul. Our eagle is famous from our study of Maseches Truma. It's a round cake of figs. So instead of just eating figs, they'd squish the figs up into a cake, and then you could cut slices of the fig cake and eat it that way. So when is that done and needs to be tithed before it's snacked on? Mishi yachalikenu, when you glaze it. So they would rub fruit juice on this, similar to how we glaze a challah with a little egg yolk or something, a little something on it, to give it that sort of a nice sheen. Machalikim b'ta'ainim uvanavim shel tevel. And you can even put this sheen on by using juice from figs and grapes that are tevel, that are not yet tithed. So since you're sort of squeezing the liquid directly onto your fig cake, it's not really considered juicing. Again, there's a similar concept in Hilchos Shabbos about, for example, squeezing a lemon onto a piece of fish. It's not exactly juicing, which would be usser, but it's making the food absorbed into another food. But we'll get to Shabbos, we'll talk all about that. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you cannot do that with tevel. He says the juice is really extant, and it would need to be tithed before eating from your fig cake. Hamachalik ba'anavim, someone who's glazing his fig cake with grape juice, lo huchshar, it doesn't make it able to accept tuma. And we talked about in the end of Trumot that there were 7 liquids that if they get onto something, make it ready to accept truma. Rabbi Yehuda omer huchshar. Rabbi Yehuda says that does indeed work to make it mekabel tuma. A grogrot. Now, what about dried figs? You could put figs into a cake, or you could simply dry them, and then you stick them all in a barrel. Mi sheyodush. When you squash them down in the barrel so you can fit more dried figs in there. Umagura mi sheyogil. And magura either means a storehouse or a round shape to squish them into. When he smooths them out, makes a nice pile or a nice form in that shape. Hayadosh bechavit, malguba megura. He's pressing his figs into the barrel, or he's smoothing out the pile in the storeroom. So he's in the process of finishing up these figs. So he's kind of in process of getting them to the final stage of gomer melacha. Nishbira chavit, and the barrel breaks, and everything's falling out everywhere. Niftacha megura, or the storehouse or the mold breaks opened. Lo yocham, he can't eat from them as a snack because he started the last stage of preparation, even though it broke in the middle and he never really got to the final stage. Rabbi Yossi matzar. Rabbi Yossi allows eating them as a snack because he says, listen, even though some of the figs were completely processed, he intended to put all of these figs into the same process or the same storage. So Lamaisa is not done yet, and they're not Gemar Melacha. Shkoyach Rabosai.